I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario. With grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold, a drill program will commence this spring to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork. For more information, visit our website, rmroyalty.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
Welcome to HowStreet.com radio. We're chatting with Hilliard MacBeth, author of the book When the Bubble Bursts, Surviving the Canadian Real Estate Crash. He's also a portfolio manager and financial advisor in Edmonton. Welcome back to the show, Hilliard.
Hello, Jim.
In Toronto, finally, with a 30% rise in housing prices there, and in the suburbs, more like 40 to 60%. The Ontario Finance Minister, the Federal Finance Minister, and Toronto's Mayor huddled up on Tuesday. Thursday, they're expected to bring in measures. We don't know what, but Hilliard, what do you suspect they might do?
Well, it looks like they're going to require people to talk about who they are and what the purpose of the purchase is. For example, they want to know the citizenship of the buyer. They want to know if the person intends to live there or not as their principal residence. They want to know if it's going to be rented out as a business or not. These are all things that are probably could have been required before if you followed the rules strictly, but they haven't been followed that closely. For instance, they want to know if it's a corporation, who all the beneficial owners of that corporation are. And that's always been required, but I think in a lot of cases people didn't probe that deeply. But once you start asking in some of these numbered corporations who all the beneficial owners are, it gets quite complicated. So it'll be very interesting to see how it happens. And I don't know if it's as extreme as Vancouver in terms of the foreign money coming in. I suspect it's not in Toronto, but it's going to have a big impact, I think. And they're talking about a fine if you don't meet these requirements. These are all speculations. I'm just looking at some reports that have come out that I think they may have gotten advance notice of what actually is going to be announced. So we'll have to wait and see the exact details for tomorrow. But in reality, this thing was going to end at some point anyway. And one of the signs that things are getting close to the end, of course, other than just the fact that government's taking action, is the fact that listings have dried up. So what happens at the very end of a bubble is the sellers get really greedy and they decide to pull their houses off the market because they're hoping that if it's going to go up 20% in 1 year, maybe I should wait another year and it'll go up another 20%. So this is one of the issues that's happened in Toronto, and it's a sign that things are coming to an end. Something very similar happened in Edmonton and Calgary back in 2007, and more recently in Vancouver as well.
So that's really the reason. It's not that the supply has gone away. People just want more for that supply.
Well, the supply is there, but is it for sale? It's like I wrote about our experience when we bought our house, which the seller said it was a tear down, and we decided we're going to renovate it. And then I found out how much it was going to cost to renovate. It was like an incredibly ridiculous amount of money, and that was the estimate too. Of course, the reality might even be higher than that. So I decided, instead of doing that, then let's just go around and we'll buy an existing house that somebody's already renovated. Well, there wasn't anything for sale that was even halfway decent, right? So there's lots of supply of housing, and we can prove that by looking back at the last 10 years of investment in housing, new build and renovations. There's tons of supply that's been built in Canada over the last 10 years, and you compare it to the U.S. and Canada, you can see the ratios and everything. But if it's not for sale, it's not available, right? It's got to be for sale. So, and that's the problem. Only about 5% of the housing stock in any given year is turned over. So there's 95% of it sitting there. And if even 1% of those people that were thinking about selling decide, maybe I'll wait a little bit because the prices might be higher next year than they are right now, which of course would be a logical thought to creep into somebody's mind, then now you've got a shortage of supply. But it's a shortage of available houses for sale. It's not actually a shortage of supply.
Also, too, some people actually buy a house to live in. And even though somebody might say they'll throw a lot of money at you to move, you've found the perfect location. Your family likes the place. Why pull up your roots and, do the whole restart again? Well,
that's what I learned in our little experience with the looking for a house that had been renovated to the standard that we would have liked. I finally, after a few weeks of looking, I realized, if somebody actually gets a really nice house and spends the ridiculous amount of money it costs to do it right, if you do a proper renovation with really good finishing and, expensive stuff, why would you ever sell that house? You're not going to sell it. You're never going to find anything remotely as good when you sell it and start looking around. So yeah, I mean, it's like once people, and the other thing too is there is an actual interesting thing that happens in real estate in bubbles, which is the whole thing about do you sell before you buy. So if somebody actually might like to sell, but if people are bidding over market and there's 10 bidders on every house that they go to, they start thinking, well, wait a minute. If we sell our house, we put it up for sale, we're going to be homeless. Like, what are we going to do? Live in our car? Now, I would say, if somebody asked me, I would say, you know what? Live in a hotel for a couple of months. Don't worry about it. But most people aren't going to do that, right? They'd have to put all their furniture in storage. They'd have to go through a lot of stuff. And so I think that also discourages people from selling. So it's a very illiquid market, and especially when you get these incredible moves of 20-30%, becomes even more illiquid. But the asking for getting back to the changes that are happening in Toronto tomorrow and similar to the changes that happened in Vancouver last year, this asking for more information is putting a damper on it for sure, because to the extent that there are, and there obviously are some people that are parking money in real estate, whether it's money laundering or if it's just money that they've got that they want to put somewhere. Some of them, at least a few of them anyway, are not necessarily wanting to reveal everything to the government about where that money came from, and that's going to put a real damper on. I'm sure it already has in Vancouver, and I suspect in Toronto it will again. So there's a lot of moving pieces in this thing, and there's been some real surprises in the last couple of years in terms of how much the market has gone up, and especially in terms of the amount of speculation that's come in. Every bubble, it's like the dot-com bubble in 1999, 2000. It lasts longer than you expect, and towards the very end, the speculation just gets absolutely, completely crazy. Like a mania is the only word for it, really.
We'll have more with Hilliard MacBeth right after the break.
Aben Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Aben's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at abenresources.com.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Hilliard MacBeth. Hilliard, it's nice to know that Ottawa is concerned about Canada's housing bubble, but that's only because it's happening in Toronto. Not a peep out of the feds when it was happening in Vancouver.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think we talked about it before. It's not real until it happens in Toronto, but it is real now because it's happening in Toronto. But I did watch an interview. There was an interview with the Finance Minister, Bill Morneau on BNN this morning, I think, and after his meeting with the Ontario Finance Minister, and they are leaving it up to the Ontario government and the City of Toronto. I don't think the federal government is really planning to make any more moves, but he does say in that interview that if needed, they will make more changes. So I think one of the things that is not being addressed yet, and I don't expect it to be addressed tomorrow, because it would have been in the federal budget more likely, is this whole thing about speculators versus investment. So if people buy a house and they live in the house for a long period of time, the idea is they shouldn't have to pay tax on the capital gains. So there's a principal residence exemption. Everybody knows now. They've tightened that up now so that people used to just claim it even though there was no form to fill out. Technically, there actually is a form. Now you actually have to fill that form out even if you qualify for the exemption. So any sale of a property will have to be reported, and that'll put a damper on things alone. But the next step to go would be, and I don't know what the right time frame is, 1 year or 2 years or whatever, or 6 months, I don't know. I guess they'll have to decide. But the flipper tax, you could call it, where if it's even if people live in the home, that exemption is not designed for people that buy and then it goes up 20% and they sell and move to another home. It was designed to adjust for the fact that over a long period of time, people shouldn't be paying tax on gains that are actually more as a result of inflation than anything else. But in the short term, if it's a 1 year flip with a 20% gain, that isn't really what the principal residence exemption was originally designed for. So they may make that additional change and say that people that are speculating in homes have to pay tax on it, like you would if you bought and sold a stock or any other capital gains. Or it goes even one step further. If somebody's in the business of if it becomes their business, then it's actually business income and it's fully taxable. You don't get the capital gains exemption. But right now, I suspect there's all kinds of people that aren't paying any tax on those flips, and that'll be interesting to see how far they go in that respect.
Right, and I've heard that some people, to get around that principal residence, well, they just put people in there to live. Those people aren't paying rent. They're my friends or my family, and they're staying with me, but you're never there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's very lax. I really don't think anybody checks up on this, but the move they made. I just started working on my income tax recently, and it says the mandatory reporting of your principal residence sale or change of use. This is a new. So even if you don't sell it, but you change it from principal residence to maybe something that you'd rent out or something like that. I don't know. For instance, that's an interesting question. What if you, and this is quite common in Vancouver and maybe in Toronto as well, what if you put in a basement suite and start renting out the basement suite? Does that change the principal residence exemption? I don't know. That's an interesting question, but this is going to affect a lot of people, and I think that my thesis has always been that the bubble was going to burst eventually anyway, and people would ask me what's going to be the catalyst, higher interest rates or whatever, and I said, well, I don't know. It could be a recession, could be higher interest rates, could be changes in government rules. It seems like we might be getting all three at once here, because one of the problems with cracking down on real estate, and this is why the governments are being very careful, I'm sure, is that it's such an important industry in Toronto and Vancouver and really all over Canada that if there is a significant slowdown in real estate, it could cause a recession. So it would be the causation would go the other way. The slowdown in real estate would cause a recession rather than a recession causing a bursting of the bubble in real estate. But either way, the bubble will burst, and it's going to be a difficult time for Canada. And of course, I don't know if you heard President Donald Trump ranting about Canada and the unfair dairy practices in Canada. But certainly I think people were hoping that the talk about NAFTA had kind of died down, and there wasn't a whole lot of talk, and people were thinking that maybe this whole talk about ripping up NAFTA was just a campaign rhetoric, and it wasn't really going to happen. Well, yesterday he was talking about NAFTA as a disaster, and it's very unfair to the U.S. And he, for some reason, I think because he was in Wisconsin, he picked on Canadian dairy farmers. So there's going to be a lot of challenges, and it isn't just in the real estate market.
Well, the good thing is Donald Trump has the attention span of a 3-year-old. So tomorrow it'll be Mexican tacos. Yeah,
I guess that's right. We can hope that he'll lose interest and find a shiny new object someplace else, like North Korea or something, and forget about us. But so we're in for that's the old curse of being in interesting times. But for sure, the period, and basically it's a 15, 17-year period that we've been in where real estate prices have been pretty much going up steadily. We've already seen it in Alberta. I think lately the BC's at least leveled off, if not dropped a little bit. And the combination of the changes that were taken in the fall in 2016 by the federal government over mortgage financing with CMHC, plus these changes that they're doing tomorrow, are going to create a whole new era in real estate. And I think, as people have said, several people have said this from the government, people should not assume, and they should not buy a house with the thought that it's guaranteed that the price is always going to go up. It could go down too.
We'll have more with Hilliard MacBeth right after this.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Hilliard MacBeth. Hilliard, there really does seem to be this attitude that housing prices can do nothing and go up. And after an 8-year bull market, so many people now have this attitude that the stock markets can do nothing but go up. But both of those things are huge bubbles, and I was just watching a very good presentation on BNN that said anytime you have a bubble where things are going up 30% a year, when the correction happens, you're going to lose 60% of your value, roughly. It could be 50%, it could be 70%, but they said on average it's 60%. Could we see a 60% drop in the value of our homes? We could,
and one of the things that I researched was the work by Jeremy Grantham out of Boston. He's a head of $100 billion annual, or $100 billion in assets. And I heard him talk at a presentation in 2003. And he researched 28 bubbles in the stock market, in the real estate market, in commodities. And every single case, where there was a significant bubble, the price corrected all the way back to the trend line that was in place before the bubble started. So in this case, in Toronto and Vancouver, it would be, you'd have to go back to 2001 or something like that, to find the trend line. And, basically in Vancouver, prices are up 3.5-fold, and in Toronto they're up 3-fold, and Edmonton a little bit less, maybe 2.5-fold, but it's all roughly the same, 2 to 3 times average. So to get back to the original thing, it actually is more than a 50% drop, and it's hard to imagine. You get a little bit of help with inflation, so because the trend line is going up at the rate of inflation. So in 17 years, there would normally be maybe a 34% gain, not a 200% gain. So 50% would be what you'd expect to get back to that trend line, and this is what happened in the U.S. It went up from 2000 to 2006, and by 2010, it had pretty much gone all the way back down, which was in the case of the U.S., it was a 40% drop. But our bubble in Canada, and especially in Toronto and Vancouver, is much, much bigger than the bubble in the U.S., the peak that it reached in 2006.
Are Vancouver and Toronto unique in that they both have huge increases in population in their greater areas every year?
The numbers don't really... the fastest growing populations in Canada were Calgary and Edmonton for 10 years. The census just came out in 2016, and in both Calgary and Edmonton, it was 2.2 to 2.3% annually. So, roughly 20,000 to 25,000 on a million population. In Toronto, the increase has been less than 1%. It's about 0.95% or something like that. So now Toronto's a lot bigger. 5 million greater GTA, so you're looking at 50,000 people a year increase. So the actual population growth has slowed down, but the immigration has made up for some of that. But the numbers that get tossed around are just not accurate at all. There is very little sign of huge influx of people. I think if there's been an influx, it's in foreign money, which is more in the case of investment or money laundering or whatever you want to call it. But the actual number of people has not really gone up as fast as people think. And there's still lots of space in all of these cities, Toronto, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary. I know Vancouver people like to think they're running out of space, but I checked the density in Vancouver. It's about the quarter the density of a city like Munich, Germany, which is much more crowded. So there's lots of room for us to, if there really were an influx of people, and we needed to make more space for them, there's still lots of space. Canada's got unlimited amount of space. So it's not that. It really is money and speculation and this latest new thing, which is the sellers that are getting greedy and not putting their houses on the market. And so all of these things will get resolved when the bubble bursts.
Hilliard, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Nice to be on the show again.
My guest has been Hilliard MacBeth, author of the book When the Bubble Burst, Surviving the Canadian Real Estate Crash. His website, macbethgroup.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show or for our guests can be emailed to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.